Thank you, Lois. So today, we're going to start a new series. As you can tell by the banners behind me, which were here last week, but it's going to be all about missions. It's going to be going out into the world and making disciples, just the way we were told to do in Matthew 28. Now, before we do that, I do want to take a second to acknowledge those that are at home. Because those that are at home watching us online, that's part of a mission. That is the church working outside of our four walls, and that they have the belief, they have the commitment, and they have the love to tune in through Facebook or through YouTube. So I just want to acknowledge and bless those at home watching. Dottie, I know you are watching. God bless you. I know we have Margie. She watches from home. We have Don and Judy. Almost got my in-laws' names wrong. Gosh, who else do we have at home? We have, help me out here. Who else watches from home? Dee, I'm sorry, I almost forgot Dee. Dee, thank you so much for watching at home and keeping this going and just help spread the word the way we need to spread the word. Because a lot of times when we think of missions, we only think about overseas. We only think about people, going on airplanes or ships or whatever and going to other countries and being a missionary. I'm reading a biography of a woman named Katie Barnwell. She is one of the leading authorities on Bible translation. And she's been doing it her whole life, to be honest with you. Like the part in her book right now I'm reading takes place back in the early 60s, and she was in her late 20s, early 30s. She's been doing this her whole life. But that's not just what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is what we can do. And I know a lot of people are sitting there saying, I can't do anything. I can't do anything to be a missionary. Has anyone ever been a missionary? Has anybody ever been part of a missionary? Moises, you've been a part of a missionary? Great. Awesome. That's amazing. Has anyone ever talked to somebody about God? Look at all those hands going up. That's what a missionary really is. A missionary is taking God's word to somebody else. We love to see missions that go overseas. We love to see missions through Bible classes, like Sandy was sharing, like where you get to work with children. Missions for teenagers, at youth groups and such. And missions with other adults, where we get to go out and visit other people. We can all be missionaries in our own community. I read, while I was preparing for this message, I read where it said, missions are so much more than going overseas. What it's about is seeing the cross of Jesus clearly and going where that leads you. You may not be led to go over to translate Bibles in Africa like Katie Barnwell was. You might be led to be a missionary to your neighbor or someone at the gym or working with children. We all have our own calling. What's important is that when God calls us to do something, we do it. Missions could be as simple. I'm not even going to use the word simple. Because I don't think this is simple. Missions could be as meaningful as praying for the people that are serving out there. We support missions through the church. And as we talked earlier, we did receive some contributions that we would like to redistribute out into missions. And that's why you're given that little slip of paper to fill out, because we want your help to decide. We want to know what kind of mission is important to you. That's not necessarily, just one off of the internet or one that, you saw on television. There's a lot of local missions too that could use our help. So remember that when you're filling out your piece of paper, that it could be something down the street. It doesn't have to be anything huge. Because there's no reason that every person in this church can't be a part of a mission. Missions is a church thing. It's what we were called to do. In the bulletin over at Bainbridge, it says along the top, and I thought it was very appropriate for this message, it says to know Christ and to make Christ known. It is our mission to know Christ and to make Christ known. And that's why our message today is Mission Possible. Because a lot of times we'll sit there and think it's the impossible. But we're going to learn how possible it is. And we're going to learn about the first missionary of the Bible. Anyone guess who it was? I hear somebody out there. No, it wasn't. I mean, it's the first missionary in the Bible. I'll give you a clue. God said to him, all the people on earth will be blessed through you. Abraham. Noah's a good, actually I thought of Noah first, whoever said Noah. But it was actually Abraham, because God gave him the commandment of all people on earth will be blessed through you. And God's promise to Abraham really sets the tone for the rest of Scripture. Because God blesses his people to be blessings to other people. And we did talk about this previously when we did talk about Noah, and even going back as far as talking about Adam and Eve, where God told them not just to be fruitful and multiply, but to fill the earth. God's original plan was to fill the earth with people. But Abraham was the first person that he really talked to, that he told him that great nations were going to be built through him. Now my question is, why do you think God picked Abraham? I'll jump back and forth. But why do you think God chose Abram? What was that? He knew his heart. That's a good answer. Because did you know that Abram was not a follower of God? Not at first, at least. We learned in Joshua 24:2 that where Abram came from when he was with his father, Terah, that the son of Abraham, well, let's just read through it real quick, because we're going to be in Genesis 12 today. Genesis 12 is the story of Abraham, or at least where it begins. But before we jump into that, I'm going to be at chapter 11, verse 31, where it says that Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot and his son Haran and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abraham's wife, and they went with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And then they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So what we take from that, when in conjunction with Joshua 24:2, were the locations where he came from. The place of Ur, it says, was the epicenter of a god, a moon god, named Nannar. And the same god was worshipped in Haran, but it had a different name. It was the same god, but they gave it a different name. Does anyone know what its name was? Sin. Can you imagine that? The translation of the god's name in Haran, where they had settled, was sin. And Abram did not know the one true and living God. What he knew was this Mesopotamian god of the moon. And that's who he worshiped. He was worshiping false idols. So why do you think God came to him? Because he knew his heart. Because Jesus said in John 15:16, "You do not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain." So the same way that God chooses people, he chose to pull Abram out of idolatry for this false god. He was calling him because he knew he had a good heart. 2 Thessalonians 2:13 also says, "Salvation comes because God calls in grace, and sinners respond in faith." So this is the setting for Abraham. This is where Abraham is being not only chosen to go out into the country, but he's also being pulled from his own death, meaning not knowing the one true God. And when God approaches Abram in chapter 12, verse 1, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, 'Get out of your country and from your family and from your father's house.'" So Abram is saying, get out of this place. It's bad for you. Leave it all behind. And God says to Abram, "I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Sounds a lot like Matthew 28, but at the beginning of the Bible instead. This is where Abraham really has some choices to make. But I tell you what two words really resonate from those passages? From verses 1 through 3, God says, "I will." He says, "I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. And I will bless those who bless will. And I will curse him who curses you." Now, whenever you read in the Bible, when God says, "I will," can you trust that? Absolutely. Whenever God says, "I will" to you, that is the truth. That is a covenant. That is a promise from God that he will do that. Now, in the same way, can God believe us when we say, "I will"? Be honest. Unfortunately, I don't think he can. I'm not saying it's not always true, but even in the case of Abram or Abraham here, he's kind of 50-50, if you know Abraham's story. And we're only going to go so far in his story today, but we can trust what God is saying to us. And when God says, "I will" to us, we must react in faith. If we don't react in faith, odds are we're going to go our own direction. But I'm sure Abraham's going to follow these directions. Let's move on to verse 4. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him. Good. He's listening to God. And Lot went with him. And Lot went with him. God had told him to get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house. But Abram took Lot with him. I'm sure Abram was like, well, how much trouble could Lot be? But instead, he took him with him. Abram's already starting to veer away in his own direction. And it goes on to say, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. So he was an older man. He was an older man who had no children. His wife was barren. But he was trusting the Lord. A 75-year-old man that sets out on his own. He is trusting the Lord to move forward. And then verse 5 says that Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and departed to go. So once again, Abram brings in his own translation to say, I know God said that I should get out of the country, from my family and from my father's house, but I'm going to take Lot. I'm going to take my wife, which is good. I would take you. Which would take his wife, but all his possessions that they had gathered, and the people from whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go. So it wasn't just Lot, it wasn't just his wife, it was all the people he took with him. Why? Because sometimes when God directs us, sometimes when God gives us a path, we have trouble letting go of our past. I know I've been there. God gives me a direction, but I still want to hold on to a piece of my past just in case. With everything that God had said, I will to, I believe Abram could have trusted that he would be returned to his wife, because he was supposed to be the father of many nations. But instead, Abraham took it under his own ideas to bring all these people with him. It goes on to say they took all these people to the land of Canaan. And so they came to the land of Canaan, and Abraham passed through the land to a place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were there in the land. So, up until this point, Abraham is being trustworthy. He is following God's direction, minus the large group of people that he brought with him. But he's still on the move. And this is where the covenant comes between Abraham and God. The foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and even Islam comes from this interaction between God and Abraham. This foundation between God and Abraham is where God promises Abraham descendants, a land, and blessings, again, for all nations through Abraham's lineage. Abraham is a 75-year-old man. His wife is barren. But God says, I will do these things. So Abraham leaves with trusting in the Lord with his faith. If we know the rest of the story, we know that Abraham messes up a few times. But the important thing is that he followed God, even with his own ideas. Nobody's perfect. That's what I want to pass on, is that nobody is going to be perfect. But it doesn't mean that you stop going in the direction that God sends you. It says, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants, I will give this land. And to your descendants, I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. And then after this, he moved from there to a mountain east of Bethel. And there he pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abraham, when he put a tent down, really marked him as a stranger in the land, a traveler, some may say a pilgrim in an unholy land. But he was also saying he was not part of this world. Even though this was where God was promising him would be his land, he still acted like an outsider. And by putting an altar to God, his God, he was marking himself as a citizen of heaven and a worshiper of one true God. He was making himself stand out among the other idol worshipers in that country, in that community he was in. He made himself stand out as a worshiper of the one true God. Because I would imagine where he put his tent down, the people around him were living of the world. There were other idol worshipers. There were other people in this town, but he made himself stand out among them. He did not hide behind the fact he was a Christian, or he was a follower of God. I wish I could always say the same thing. I am a pastor, which with that title should come that behavior. And it's sad to say it doesn't always happen. Yesterday, we had to go to the notary in Mount Joy. And while she was in the notary, I noticed there's a street fair going on. Did anybody see the street fair? Did you see it? Did you go to it? Good. Did you know what it was? Okay. So I didn't want to stand inside the notary office because it was all crowded and, boring. So I'm like, all right, I like a street fair. I'm going to go check out the street fair. So I started walking down the street, and I look over and I see incense. I walk a little farther, I see crystals. I walk even farther. This is like 2 or 3 blocks of Mount Joy. And I see a medium or a fortune teller. And I'm amazed. I'm sure I was walking around with like this look on my face like someone that lost their car in a parking lot because I didn't understand what was going on. And I kept walking farther down the street, and they had different color candles and pentagrams. And and jewelry and children. Children is what upset me the most, because children don't know what they're looking at. Children don't know if they pick up a pretty necklace with a star on it, that that star has a meaning in a darker realm. And I walked through, and I went back to the car, and I just sat down in the car, turned the air conditioner on. In retrospect, I'm thinking I should have done more. As a pastor, as a Christian, as a child of God, I feel like I should have done more. I'm not saying flipping the tables. I wasn't doing that. I don't know if any of you are watching Chosen Season 5, but we just watched the Flipping Tables episode. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't even going to go through, and I have tracts in my car. We just got new books of life that were in the car. I wasn't going to go around and just start slapping them down on the tables. But I could have done it in the simplest of forms. I could have walked through the streets praying for the people that were there without laying a hand on them, without putting judgment on them. Because these people are seeking out these false things for a reason. And I don't want to be judgmental and say, you're wrong, you're going to hell. But I want to tell them, don't light that candle to get rid of evil spirits in your house, because you're only welcoming more in. I want to say, pray to the one and only God. Ask in the name of Jesus to remove those things from your life, because they had candles for anxiety, candles for depression, candles for fertility, all kinds of weird stuff. And I'm disappointed in myself as I'm reading my message here that I did not lay a tent down and build an altar and have myself stand out as a pilgrim in an unholy land. It does make me sad, because I'm speculating, if we wanted to contact Mount Joy Borough and ask to have a Bible Street Festival, they would probably say no. And the unfortunate part of it is I know the gentleman that's in charge of it, and he's a Christian. He's a Christian. And he was out there walking among the vendors and talking with the vendors. But I just have this feeling, if I go to him and say, hey, can we have a Bible festival down the street, Main Street in Mount Joy, he would say no. So I'm disappointed in myself for that. I'm really disappointed in myself. But I can pray for him now. I can pray for him still. But all I did was walk away and ignore what was going on around me. So Abraham had his tent and he had his altar. But an interesting thing about this, and this is where you have to dig into meanings, and I like to dig into meanings and backstories of words. He says that as he moved there to the mountain east of Bethel, he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. So let's see. So that would be west, I think. So Bethel was to the west, Ai was to the east. Do you know what the translation of Bethel is? House of God. Good. We got some Bible studiers in the room. Now, before I ask the next one, it doesn't mean artificial intelligence. Does anyone know what AI translates to? What I hear? Ruin. Wow. Give her a golden star. Ruin is right. So I'm thinking about this in my mind. He has the house of God over here, Bethel. He has AI, ruin, over here. And where does he choose to settle? Right in the middle. Right in the middle between the two. But how many of us walk that same line? Where we can have house of God, but still reach into ruin. And stay in our comfort zone. He was walking the line between being with God and being in ruin. And I don't mean like Johnny Cash walked the line. He walked the line to stay sober, straight, yeah. This is more of how close can I get to this side without losing sight of that, but I still want to be over here a little bit. And that's where that 50-50 comes back into play. Because we don't want to walk with God holding on to our past like he did by bringing all those people and possessions with him. And we don't want to place ourselves so close to both sides. Now, it doesn't mean he couldn't have settled over here in Bethel and walked over here to try to bring people to his side, to go talk to these people, to bring him over to Bethel, because that's what a missionary does. The biggest trap for missionaries, or any of us, is to go into a place like ruin and forget our way back. We want to anchor ourselves in God. We can't live on that line. That's what happens to so many Christians that fall away from church. Is they go this way and never find their way back. When we walk in faith, we can be assured that all of God's I wills in our life will happen. Doesn't mean bad things won't happen to us. It doesn't mean that we will get everything we want. And it doesn't mean we won't be afraid. But it does mean that we can have confidence that no matter what, God will work out his purpose through you. It might not be what you want, but if it's God's purpose, it's what you should do. What if Abraham would have just given up? What if Abraham would have been walking along and he's like, man, this is just too much work. It's too hot out. I don't really like those people that live over there. I don't want to be over there because they're just trouble. I just want to settle down. I'm 75 years old. I just want to settle down with my wife, my nephew, and do whatever they did back then. Today we sit and watch Netflix. What if Abraham had just given up? What would the world look like? And this is somebody that's at the beginning of the Bible. What's our world going to look like if we give up? And I'm not just saying giving up like everyone in the congregation just says, oh, no, I'm going to go to a different church, or I'm going to go stay home, or I'm going to go, I'm going to join a band and tour the country. What it means is that we stop giving up, or we stop telling other people about God. If we stop telling people about God, then God will disappear from our country. Based on things that I've seen in our own community about different beliefs, different lifestyles, different choices being put out there, directed to our children, we are in danger. We are in danger. I understand everything going on in the news right now with the bombings overseas, and they're warning places of worship that we could be under attack. But I will take that under attack versus under attack by the spiritual world. And I know that's harsh to say, but we need to focus on the future of everybody, all nations. We can't just focus on ourselves and our own four walls here. I've said it before, and I'll say it with my dying breath. Every person you tell about Jesus is a new life that's being taken to heaven. Whether that life leaves here as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, or as a 75-year-old man walking through the desert. We don't want to leave this world and not know what is on the other side. That is the fear too many people walk in. We want to live in the confidence that when we die, no matter which way we die, we will see the face of Jesus on the other side. Missions is not about bringing our culture, our baggage, like Abraham took all his stuff. It's not about that. It's not about us bringing our culture to other nations or making other people in our neighborhood think the way we think. It's about bringing God's blessing into their life so that they can bless others. That's what we were commanded to do. I'm going to repeat again, Genesis 12:3, as God's talking to Abram. He says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. That's what it's all about. That's the purpose of the church.